Today on the New Wilkins podcast, we're talking influencer marketing strategy. I'm joined by digital marketing expert Marc Hillander. Now, Marc knows a thing or two about how to grow business, how to empower your strategy through influencer marketing. So that is the topic that we're going to cover today. And it is very timely because I think, Marc might correct me here, but I think that influencer marketing is facing a few challenges right now with fake news, with low quality reviews, and a whole host of other things that influencers can add into your mix in a positive way, but also in a potentially risky way. So welcome to the show, Marc.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neil, and thank you for having me.
This is an interesting topic because I'm seeing and reading a lot at the moment about organizations and brands and marketers and business owners who are kind of feeling like there's a pressure to not do influencer marketing because there have been a few shock stories, a lot of fake news, a lot of, obviously with AI coming in, a lot of uncertainty. Am I right, or have I got that wrong?
No, I believe you're 100% right. And that is why, if you want to do this, you need to do it on the right way. Because if you don't think about how you will act and do with your strategy, it will be extremely tough for you.
So, why do you think it's kind of gone this way? Because obviously we've had, global influencers who, everybody knows, the real kind of household names now, who are purely known for their influence. They don't do anything else. So they're not actors or sports people or, business professionals. They are purely there as influencers. Some people might say, well, that's content creators, and they just happen to now have influence. But at a micro level, these are people or individuals who may be operating in a particular sector, in or around your business, and they can be super influential as well, can't they?
Absolutely, and that is what we're seeing here, because in the past, as you're saying, we know the big names. But one tip I will come to later also is that we need to focus a little bit more on the macro and nano influencer. And the reason for that is that it will be more trustworthy. Because if we look at some data, for example, so 90% of all people believe more if an influencer talk about the product than traditional marketing. And that is a pretty amazing numbers. So if you do it right, you will be able to see a difference.
It's a big number, isn't it? It really is.
Yes.
So this is clearly why over the last, I'd say, I mean, again, you might have different numbers to me, but I'd say over the last 10 years, we've seen this massive growth in influencer marketing, and it's become a channel. It really has become a channel for marketers. Back in the day, it was websites, and it became social, and
Yeah,
we've had
exactly.
obviously all of these more traditional things, but it's become something in its own right, hasn't it? Well, why do you think it's become so powerful and so productive? I mean, that statistic is incredible. Well, why has it become so powerful?
Yeah, I believe so, because we have the new generation that has grown up with the social media. For example, if you and me want to find some information today, maybe we Google, or if we are some modern, maybe we use ChatGPT. But they are searching for information on the social channels. And that is the reason why you see why this industry grows and grows. At this time, influence marketing globally is worth around 24 billions euros, which is pretty amazing number, and it's growing every year. The reason why it is like this and it's growing is because you and me, I almost grew up with social media, but not really. Is that we need to be where our target is. And if we look 10 years ahead, everybody will use social media in a totally different way, but they will be there. And if we don't show our brand in those areas, we won't succeed in the long term, because the traditional marketing still works. But you need to start focusing if you have not. But you need, of course, to have a structure and a good plan on how to do it.
And I want to come on to that because I think for
Mm.
a lot of people who have been kind of feeling like they should do influencer marketing, but never really quite sure where to start. I think it is those, those steps in the planning process that it is going to enable them to actually do it effectively. I just want to come back to something that you, or a couple of phrases
Mm.
that you used a moment ago, where you said it's important to consider macro and nano influencers.
Mm.
Can you guide us in terms of the different levels of influencer then? Because not all influencers are of the same scale or size, are they?
No, so if we look at the macro, they are below 50,000. And then if we look at the nano, it's below 10,000. And the reason I'm talking a lot about them is that they normally have a stronger relationships to their followers. They know them, they are a part of their life. And what we have seen, that this is a number I got from one data source, that if you use those kind of influencer, your conversion will be 23 times higher than using a mega influencer.
That's interesting, isn't it? So because I guess we've all, well, many of us have been, I guess, misled when it comes to influencer, just because we see the big names a lot, and they're always the ones that are quoted, they're always the ones that you see in the media. But actually, then, from what you're saying, is that the value, truly, the proper return on investment here can come from the smaller, more focused influencers,
Exactly.
because they are obviously, well, I'm guessing, cheaper to get on board. They're more, I guess, accessible to us. There isn't such a big share of voice, but probably their audiences are much more aligned with our brand focus. So is it about alignment? I mean, how would we find an influencer who would be appropriate for us if we're, I don't know, say we're a motor car dealership, for example, in a particular city, and we want to use influencer marketing. I'm just making this up, but if we were that, obviously we've got a defined geographic range. We've obviously got a number of set buyer personas who we're looking to target. How would we kind of, with that information, how would we kind of search out an influencer to a kind of much more local level?
Yeah, so first of all, there is a lot of great platforms out there. So that is one way of doing it, and I would say the best way, because if you need to figure out by yourself by searching through Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, it will be extremely time consuming, and probably not even worth it. Because what you can do with a platform is pretty amazing, because a lot of people think, okay, we need to find this influencer, but you need to find your audience, not the influencer. It's not important. Of course, it's important which influencer it is, but if you find your audience, their interest, then you will find a relevant influencer that will align with your value, and also with your concept that you want to go out. Because the biggest mistake companies do today when they start with influencer marketing is that they take one big name. Yeah, they sound nice, but their audience is not your target. So I believe when it comes to like influencer marketing, you need to first of all set your target. Which clients do you want to find? And with a platform, you can easily just type that in, and then you will find the relevant people that you could probably work with already.
That's a very interesting way of approaching it. I mean, I guess for a lot of us, and I mean me included, when I think of influencer marketing, yeah, I'm thinking of the influencer. And it's strange because if it was any other channel, you'd be thinking, right, where is the audience that I'm looking to target, and then work backwards. It's really strange, isn't it? Because I've never really thought of it like this. Thank you, Mark, because this is a really interesting one. Is actually, we've got to just be thinking customer first, because it's their attention, it's where their eyeballs are looking that is important. It isn't actually about the influencer. Do you know, I know a lot about this stuff, and even I kind of got it the wrong way around. That's really, really interesting. Yeah, customer first, and then who are they being influenced by, rather than the other way round? Is it? Do you think that's where a lot of people have got this wrong? Then a lot of brand owners and business owners, because they've been pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah, 100%. Because then you can't expect the result to be efficient. Because you need to understand that influence marketing is a channel exactly like Google Ads and so on. You decide this target I want to reach, or audience. But in influence marketing, if you have a platform, you are able to do exactly the same.
Yeah, that's really good. So when you're kind of looking at this then from a strategic angle, rather than just saying, "Oh, we need to be doing influencer marketing," and then just jump straight in. Let's say about a brand or a marketer is a little bit more strategic and they're thinking about it first. Where in the customer journey does influencer marketing work best? Or is it, I should be asking the question, is there a place in the customer journey? Is it best at the awareness stage? Does it help with conversion? Would we have it later in the customer journey, maybe at the retention stage where we're looking to build customer loyalty? Is there a sweet spot, somewhere where it actually works best?
That's a good question, because I would say that it works exactly like when you work with every marketing strategy that you have today, and but I believe that you should handle it the same, because when we look at marketing, we need to focus on long term, and we need to focus on short term. And I believe you could do exactly the same with influencer marketing. Of course, sometimes it could be more valuable to do a short term, because if you add some kind of discount code, you can see directly what the effect will be if this is the right audience and they really like that. But I would say, if you really want to succeed with influencer marketing, you should do both. You should have an always on to build your brand awareness, to build a relationship tighter with the influencer also, so they really become an ambassador for your company. But you also should offer them sometimes to also just get some fast deals. But that depends on which industry you are in. I would say that B2B will probably be more on the social channels, but also now, as you probably know, LinkedIn will come with their feed with videos. So it will be pretty fun to see what's happening now and next year, if we will see influencers on LinkedIn, which has not started yet. But I believe that even the new generation want to see some kind of influencer, even if it's a B2B company.
Yes, it feels like then there's a clear opportunity at every stage of the journey, which means then by default there's an opportunity as a marketer for thinking about influencer, whatever your goals are. Are there times or places where an influencer kind of approach just isn't appropriate? It just wouldn't work. Are there kind of times in maybe a marketing plan or maybe a specific campaign where you would just think, actually, we wouldn't use influencer marketing there? Are there any kind of gaps in the process?
I don't believe so. Everything is depending on how the influencer is talking about it. It's the same as different marketing strategy. You can decide in what way you want the influencer to act. Of course, creativity is extremely important when it comes to influencer marketing and all marketing, because as we know, we scroll so much today. But I believe if you find the right influencer, let them be creative. You can use that kind of marketing strategy in all your projects.
So that gets interesting. So there's a lot of flexibility in here. So when you talk about the creativity there, Mark, I mean, kind of how much kind of, I guess, responsibility or how much flexibility do you give to an influencer? Because if you have a brand, for example, that you have used, multiple different ways of marketing to build your brand over a number of years, you're really protective of it, you have brand guidelines, it's all very, let me use the word strict. So it's very carefully controlled. And then suddenly you bring an influencer into the mix. And even though they might on the surface feel as though they're very aligned with the audience, they're not part of your brand. They are something different. How does that line up with some brand guidelines that are maybe very tight? Because some organizations, not even just the big ones, some organizations have very, very precise guidelines. But then you bring an influencer in and they start talking about your product and the features or kind of the experience or anything like that. And it doesn't necessarily sit with the brand. I mean, as a marketer or a business owner, what do you do with that? That sounds a risk.
Yeah, of course it's a risk, and I agree with you with everything there, Neil. But I believe if you want to succeed with influencer marketing, you need to let the creator be creative, because otherwise it's not worth doing a campaign. Because if you want something to stand out, you can't stick to all the guidelines, but you need, of course, to align that they have the basis before they create anything. But you need to let them be the person they are, because otherwise it won't be trustworthy for the audience. And if it's not trustworthy for the audience, you won't see any result.
So it's that authenticity, isn't it? It's almost like a relationship building here then, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, do you recommend with that kind of in mind, do you recommend maybe with an influencer, and particularly for those listening and watching this who think, oh, this sounds interesting, I'd like to try it, we've never done it before. Would you recommend starting small, so doing maybe a small test campaign with a new influencer before committing to maybe a long-term kind of relationship? Is doing things really small as a pilot study, is that a good starting point?
Absolutely. You need to figure out if the influencer work together with your brand, because the value you can see later on, if you find the perfect influencer for your company, you can buy the rights to use this material and use it in your own channels. And what we see there then is that you get even higher result, because then you use the influencers material that feels trustworthy. They know, probably have seen this person before somewhere, and then you can reuse it in your own company page, and you will see extremely good result through that. So you need to figure out which kind of influencer work best with your brand. But as we said before, the most important part before you start with this is the scouting part, to find the right ones.
So on that kind of that test campaign, I'm guessing. I mean, correct me, Mark, if I'm not correct here. But I'm guessing it's kind of okay to do it very much as a test rather than try and sign up with lawyers and contracts and everything, a long-term deal. I'm guessing that kind of comes later. Is it okay to almost freestyle it for that first phase, and then if it does work and then you think, oh, actually we could do something longer term, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, is it time then for contracts, or do you have a contract literally from the start?
Yeah, I would recommend some kind of contract, and the reason for that is just so they align with your brand guidelines, and not saying things that they shouldn't, because it's super important that you have that on your side. So if they create something, that you know that you can actually use it. So I would say that a contract is important to have on place when you do your first campaign.
So I know a couple of people who are in the fashion industry, and obviously within fashion, within food, within, you know, those kinds of industries, influencer marketing is very, very well established. For these two individuals that you just made me think of there, they don't actually have financial deals. They are purely about, because it's fashion, the influencers are very low level, but they have a lot of them. So rather than focusing in on one influencer, they might have a dozen or 20, something like that. And they don't necessarily have a financial transaction. They are giving them product, and that product is free product to review, to kind of be in there. Is that at the same kind of level as a paid influencer? I mean, obviously, you know, budget is going to be spent on them, but is it the same approach? Do you treat them the same?
Exactly the same. But what is extremely good when you work with some kind of software where you are able to scout, you also get the opportunity to get a fee estimate. And in that case, it's like, what should we pay to this influencer depending on the data that the platform have. So in that case, what is good, if you give away things, you know what value the things should be. But then in the end, which we haven't come to yet, you can also follow up everything and get the data on that campaign.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the kind of the value here, because I can imagine a marketer listening to this. You know, they have their headphones on, they're listening and thinking, "Oh, this is a really good time because I need to start." Changing things up in my plans, because we're quite static. There's not really a lot happening. Influencer marketing sounds a good thing. I want to try and give this a go. But I'm feeling nervous to do it because, one, we've never done it before. Two, I'm not that confident about what those end results might be. And three, I know that when I take this to my boss, they're going to say, what's the likely ROI for this? You know, what return are we going to see for all this effort with something that is potentially quite a risk because we've never done it before? What kind of measures do you typically see? What kind of things should a marketer be looking at in terms of that return on the investment? Are there particular KPIs? Are there particular things that we can look out for?
Yeah, super good question. We get this a lot, and it all depends what you want to get it out of the campaign. So is it a brand awareness campaign that you want to do? Then you focus on how many views did this video shown to, and also which target did we actually reach, because with the right platform you see all the data that you need. Do you want to see sales that you want them to click through a link on the influencer? Then you can just look at how the CTR, how it looked on that campaign, because what we are talking about here is that influencer back in the days, I would say, was something nice to have, or we try it. But I would say 2025, it's a must have. But the biggest problem in the past has been to following up on the value that it actually brings to the companies. But now with the data, with the software, you can see it directly. So if your manager is asking, okay, what value has influence marketing given us? Then you can say, okay, we did these campaigns. We worked with 200 different influencers. This one worked best. You have like all the data clear for you to deliver and see the value of it. So because in the past, when you did influencer marketing, you probably reach out through Instagram or TikTok. You said, hey, can we do a campaign? Yeah, we do a campaign about this. And then later on, you need to chase the influencer for data. And then you needed to add the data to an Excel. And then you had everything in Excel. So what you are able to do nowadays is to get everything by automatic. So it's so easy and nice to do this. And you can actually prove the value of influencer marketing. And that is something amazing, because we can do it in all the other channels. now we can actually do it in influence marketing.
So it becomes serious then, doesn't it? Because it is, as you say, it's not that just nice to do or let's experiment and see what happens. It's actually something quite scientific, which is great, because then it's much more easy to justify. And I love that because, you know, I'm very kind of data and evidence based. I think, you know, otherwise you're, well, yeah, it's high risk. It's high risk marketing if you're not actually measuring it. So that's really good. What happens? I mean, obviously we're going to give this a positive spin and say, come on, guys, you know, you need to give this a go. It's really exciting. It will grow. It is a growth channel. I know that's something you use the word growth a lot, don't you, Mark, in terms of, you know, the positive side. What happens when it goes wrong? Because, you know, every relationship at some point will either have a few little bumps in the road, or it could be that actually over a number of different campaigns, an influencer you've worked with, it just starts to either they become distracted or they are not available, and you've invested a lot of time and energy in it. How do you kind of deal with that end of the relationship? Because you don't want to leave yourself exposed, do you? And if your audience is now getting very used to seeing this almost face of the organization, even though they're an external influencer, there is that relationship that you've crafted and built, and then suddenly it's not there. How do you deal with that?
Yep, that's a super good question, Neil. And as always, it's a super hard challenge. And I would say that you do it like you have always done in the past when it comes to marketing. You need to handle it internally, and you need to find a new one, because people are used to that. Yeah, sometime the person change. It could be a TV show we all know about. So it's just that you need to act on it, because if you believe this influencer would not work with us anymore and then it's not working, you need to find a similar one that you can work with instead, and just go on it, and not just quit doing it directly, because then you will hurt your brand, and because then they will see, okay, this person is not there anymore, are they even existing? But then if you, yeah, once again, I love platforms and data. So in a platform, you can find a lookalike profile that has the same audience interest and so on. So then you can easily, if you feel like, okay, this collaboration is starting to get really tough, start looking directly. So you have a plan B.
That's good. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think, you know, you've mentioned it probably 5 or 6 times now, Mark, haven't you? This idea of the platform. It does feel that this is this makes it more scientific, doesn't it? Rather than, as you say, looking on TikTok and Instagram for yourself, because the risk is there that they haven't been filtered, they're not vetted, you don't really know what you're going to get. Whereas going via one of the trusted platforms, there is this kind of science. I need to use that word, but there is more of a kind of a science behind it. It does feel a lot more robust, doesn't it? That's well, are there any sort of particular platforms, again, if somebody is starting out here, is there a particular platform that you would recommend people begin with just to explore?
Yeah, I would say that Sims is a great platform to start looking at, but you have a lot of other options on the market. But if you want to have a efficient and a good price platform, you could start with that. Because if we look at different platforms on the market, some is more that you need to have the influencer on the platform to be able to work with them. In some platform, you just scrape the information from each social channels. So then you get the opportunity to scout for 230 million influencers. So it all depends on how you want to work, and how you want to do it, and what budget you have for doing it. Because if you have, for example, I've met a lot of companies that had up to 200 collaboration per month, and was still using Excel.
Wow. Oh, the admin there. You've got a small team running that, haven't you?
Exactly.
Wow.
So what we see is that, Neil, you and me talk about data and science. What I've been working with my whole life is to digitalization or digitalize the workflow, because we have seen during the years that with the new technology, it's so nice that you can make things easier and actually provide value, because that is what it's all about in the end. And I just want to mention one topic now that is starting to get bigger and bigger is AI user generated content. It will be pretty fun to see how good it will be. At this time, I would not recommend it, but wait 6 months and we will probably not even notice it anymore.
So is this going to change? I know we've been talking about, the pressures on influencer marketing because of, fake news and everything else. Is the AI influencer, if we just call them that, is that going to change everything as we know it? Because, to me, if I can, create an AI that actually does work on brand 100% of the time, I know that they're going to say what I want them to say, but it's not very authentic, is it? It's not real. It's not human. Is that really going to impact on a real human influencer?
I think it will work probably in the start, because everybody think it's a little bit hyped and amazing that you can do this, and they feel like, okay, yeah, this work. But I believe, as you say, Neil, in maybe 1 year, I believe people want to see the real deal. Because in the end, we human are extremely creative, and also the creators, they understand more than an AI will ever do. But even if they will get super good, they will not be 100% real.
And I guess there is a danger that we're going to just make them 100% perfect, and they're going to be 100% agreeable with our brand or our product, and the review is just going to be absolute 5 stars plus, and it's just going to almost get too good, isn't it? Whereas a real influencer is going to tell you that some of these things didn't work as well as I wanted. This, the delivery time, it could have been a little bit quicker. They're going to give you that honest appraisal, aren't they? Whereas an AI avatar-based influencer, you're going to just program them, you're going to type it in, and these things are going to just be absolute perfection, and nobody's going to believe it, are they? I think we're going to see these two things almost sit as different channels. Maybe the AI influencer is a channel in itself that's different to a human influencer. Maybe we'll be using those phrases even. Do you think? Can you see that being different things?
Yeah, and I believe also that you probably need to use a tag in the future also when it is AI generated, so the viewer will already know from the start. And I believe also when we look at the creators that they do some things wrong in the video, but they still keep it because it feels more real. And I believe that will be tough to teach an AI to not be perfect in the end, but we will probably use the AI part in maybe onboarding or on the website that actually makes sense. But if you want to reach out and be successful with influence marketing, I don't believe that is the right way to go.
This is going to be such an interesting, year ahead, because as you say, it could be 6 months, could be 12 months, but it's coming very, very soon, isn't it? This is not something we're waiting 5 years to find out. It's going to be next year, isn't it? Or this coming year.
It is already out today. So you have probably seen a few, but maybe sometimes not realized. They talk a lot about also using AI, that an influencer do a video where they show a product, but then you can use different products through AI, but still use the same, and then just do a voiceover.
The flexibility, the cleverness, the technology is just, it's awesome, isn't it? It's just so clever, but it's the implementation and the rollout that has to maintain honesty, integrity, transparency and realism, because we don't want to be seeing reviews or some kind of feedback from an influencer, be they human or AI generated, where we don't believe it. We still need to have a belief and an honesty around this whole thing. So I'm with you, Mark, that yeah, if we're going to do this in a different way using the emerging technologies, that we do really have to declare it, because otherwise we are going to lose brand trust and faith. And as soon as we start losing that, that is not going to be very popular, I think, with the management team. They're not going to like that at all. So it's about treading carefully, I think, isn't it? And experimenting and doing pilot kind of studies and taking carefully considered steps, rather than just, Mark tells me I have to do influencer marketing, so now I just divert all my budget to it. That's not what we're saying, is it? It's about careful strategy, isn't it?
Yep, exactly. And one other thing that will be really fun to see next year is TikTok Live, how that will evolve in especially Europe. Because if we look at the Asian market, it is live shopping, the TikTok Live. And I believe we have so much opportunity in Europe if they start using it in the right way, because the cons about doing this is that you already have all your target directly in the platform or audience. So it will be an easy way if you are good to use that in the right way, because live shopping hasn't. Yeah, if we look at China, it's so big, live shopping. That is how everybody does their business today. And let's see what happens during the year in Europe, because I believe that will be amazing. And that is a perfect way also why I mention it, to use influencer, where they go through all your products, talk about them, the audience can ask questions, and they can really get the feeling that, okay, this person understands the product or service, and they can actually help me answering. I trust them because I follow them. They are a part of my life. So I believe there is something also pretty fun to see on how we can do it. But the biggest challenge there will be, of course, to find the right one, but also what price should you take? Because one video, it's pretty easy to understand what the market value is. But if they do a TikTok Live for 1 hour, what value should that bring?
That's exciting, isn't it? And I hadn't really made that natural link between live shopping, social commerce, and influencer marketing. But they're so linked, aren't they? Potentially, you could, if you're going to do one of those things, you could do all three and see that into relationship building between them. And as you say, it is such a big thing in China. And what used to be the case in Europe is we would always be looking west to see what the US were doing, then we'd copy them. But this feels like it's being driven from where we are here in Europe, from the east, and we're actually seeing the China influence and those kind of buying behaviors actually come into our markets too. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic, which we've not really seen before in my experience.
No, I agree. It's just if we look at Temu and Chen, we have seen that they can succeed in Europe. So, and they did it with influencer marketing a lot in each market. So
exciting times ahead. I'm so glad we've had this conversation, Mark. I really am, because I think often I'm on the lookout, and I know you are, because you use the word growth all the time, but I'm always on the lookout for how can we be doing things differently at the next step, either that's next month, next year, or in 2 years' time. And it just feels that this one is just at that moment where it's a mature concept, not necessarily for every business or brand in every sector, but it is a mature concept. It is a channel that is very well proven if you do it right in the way you've described it. But it feels that the other things now around it are aligning with it, which means you can't ignore it. You really mustn't, as a marketer or business owner. This is the time to think about it properly. So I love that. Final thought, Mark, from you. As people are going into next year, I keep saying next year, it's because we're recording this right at the very end of 2024. But if we're listening to this in 2025, maybe early 25, and we're rolling out some new strategies and plans, what's the first thing I should do? If I've listened to you, Mark, and I think, yeah, okay, you've convinced me, what is my next step? What is the very first step I should take?
That's a good question. First of all, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask me if you want any help. I would gladly help you. But the first of all, I would say define your audience. Because otherwise, it's no idea to start scouting, handling campaigns, get the data. Define your audience.
It's as simple as that. Pure marketing. That is where
pure marketing.
all the best marketers start, and they always do.
Yeah.
So that's a great piece of advice. We can all get very, very carried away by the hype and the tech and everything else. And oh, look, there's a big name and they want to work with us. But it's actually about the audience, because ultimately it is the customer that we're here to serve. So that's really simple but profound.
Yeah, and also one thing I just want to mention, even when you have a platform, also if an influencer reach out to you, which happened a lot of brands, then you have the opportunity to check them out before. And that's pretty amazing also. So you are able to understand if they will be a fit or not. And you can say no if you don't believe that. Otherwise, it will be a gamble. And in marketing, we like gamble sometimes, but we want also to stick to the data.
Absolutely. So measure, set your KPIs, be strategic, think of the long term, don't shy away from this, but take carefully considered steps, I think is Marc's advice. Marc, this has been just such a great conversation, and we'll put the link to your LinkedIn in the description below. So if you're listening or watching this and you want to contact Marc and ask those questions which apply to your sector or your brand or your business, then do feel free to reach out to Marc, because Marc is a seasoned expert in this and has answers for pretty much every sector, I would say. So Marc, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you very much.